guys, welcome back to my channel, and today's topic is elderly fish or aging fish, what to look for if you think you have one or if you do, and some tips and advice on how to care for them in their last final days or months. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about elderly aging fish, please stay tuned and keep on watching. Okay, so today's topic, like I said in the little video intro, is going to be about aging fish or elderly fish. And I don't really see this topic among the fish community, or fish tube, what most people like to call it. And I've only seen like 2 videos, and the videos that I have seen were about betas, looking at the signs for beta fish that are aging and what to look for. But no one ever really talks about it in the community among other species of freshwater or saltwater fish. You'll hear a few things, but nothing that you can really substantially look for to help you kind of look out and see if you have that in your tank and to make adjustments and things like that. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So the first thing I want to talk about, I want to do a little tiny disclaimer. A lot of these signs that I'm going to share with you are also can be signs of illnesses and other more serious conditions in your fish. So your fish may not even be elderly at all. You could just have a sick fish. So if you see any of these signs, pay special attention to your fish, because you never know, it may be a symptom of some sort of illness that you might need to treat. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna say is that it's all gonna start off with the life expectancy or the lifespan of your fish. So whatever species of fish you have, whether it's saltwater or freshwater, you're gonna wanna know how old your fish is in its life expectancy. So in my case, I have live bearers, and I'm gonna share with you a little video and some pictures, because I did recently lose a fish that I had when I first started up my very first freshwater aquarium. It was one of the first fish that I bought, literally the first fish among a couple of other ones. But she was the oldest fish in the aquarium. She never got sick. She never had any problems, never had any issues, whether I changed the water or not, or whatever various factors that go on in an aquarium. She was unfazed, like nothing. I mean, there could be other sick fish in there and she was fine. She was always fine, which I find very, very rare in this hobby. But there are some fish keepers out there who have probably had the same experience, having a fish that just was so vibrant and healthy that nothing bothered them. So this was her. So I knew that things that I was experiencing with her were signs of her aging. So I'm gonna put a couple of clips and video, or a couple of clips and some pictures here or there, somewhere around here, so you guys can kind of take a look at that while I talk to you guys. It's not like completely boring you with just a ton of information, so you'll have something else to look at. Okay, so I keep live bearing. Most life expectancy for live bearing fish are up to 5 years for the most part. So anywhere between 2 and 5 years. I would even go as low as to say 1.5 years to 5 years, depending on what species of live bearer you have. And maybe there's some others out there besides live bearers, some egg-laying fish that are in the freshwater tropical community may have that, as well as maybe some in the saltwater as well. Live bearers tend to be hardy, and the fish that I keep tend to be hardy. When I mean by hardy, I mean that this fish can take up a wide range of water parameters and can accept if you don't clean your tank out as often as you should. So that doesn't mean that you should skip water changing, but if you happen to skip water changing, then they'll be okay. Or if you have a certain type of tap water or something, whether it's hard or soft or whatever your pH is, and it fluctuates a little bit, these types of fish can adapt to that a little bit better than a lot of other sensitive fish like rainbows or cichlids or things like that, or discus, for example. Discus are very sensitive. So live bearers tend to be a little bit more hardy when it comes to that. Also, mollies are a little bit more sensitive to things like that as well, and it's kind of hard to have mollies in fresh water because a lot of that's how that can also affect the lifespan and things of your fish as well. But these fish that I keep, they're pretty hardy. You know the age of the fish before you've gotten it, you're going to have a little bit of trouble figuring out how old the fish is unless you have that information. Now, as far as live bearers are concerned, a good way to kind of tell, but it's not completely accurate. So this information can help you, but I'm not going to say it's foolproof because it's not. When you have a live bearing fish, which means that they carry the eggs stay internally into the female, and then the male fertilizes those eggs, and the eggs stay inside of the body until they are fully developed and they're free swimming fish, and then they're expelled out of the cavity of the female, and then they're alive basically. So that's live bearers. Most live bearers are fully sexually mature at the age of 4 months old. So the minimum of 4 months old is when your fish is going to be sexually mature. That means that fish, if you have male fish in that particular tank, that 4-month-old fish is going to be able to breed for you. So you're going to get live bearing babies from that fish because that fish is old enough to do so. Okay, so when you get a fish from a particular place, and the best way to tell is if that fish is pregnant when you receive that fish is more likely 4 months or older. Usually most fish that you get in the local fish store are about 6 months old or older. So you can kind of go on that just a little bit when you have live bearing fish. Now, to do some kind of estimating math, if you've kept your fish for 1.5 years at least, 2 years or more, add on about 4 months or add on about 6 months and add that to the total of how many years you've had that particular fish, and then that's when you can go on deciding how to know if your fish is aging. Coloration, fading of the coloration in the fish. So if you're giving your fish quality food, a variety of food, high quality food, and you do your water changes and your fish is not sick or anything like that, and you start to see a gradual fade in your fish, it's most likely aging. If you see a drastic change in a fish that you've gotten, and first it was colored up beautifully one day and 2 days later or something like that, it's like white, that might be a sign of stress. If you have a fish that used to swim vibrantly all the time and never had the shimmies or going up and down the walls of the aquarium, you may have a fish that is aging as well, because older fish tend to swim a lot slower than younger fishes. If your fish is lethargic in any way, really slow swimmer, doesn't swim as fast as it used to be, and you've had your fish for 1 year or more, plus adding that little bit of time from when you got your fish is most likely aging. So that's number 2. Number 3, I would say heavy breathing. If you ever notice a fish that tends to like gasp as it's swimming around, not at the top of the tank or at the bottom. If you have a fish that is tending to be breathing very heavily at the bottom of your aquarium or right at the top of your aquarium, you may have an issue. You may have a water parameter issue, or you may have a high concentration of nitrates or nitrites or ammonia in your tank, so you may want to do some water testing with that. But if it's an older fish, if you had it again 1 year or more, that may be a sign. So if they're kind of swimming around and they're breathing heavy, that could be a sign of other things, but it also can be a sign of your fish is aging. The next one is eating less. If you have a fish that eats a whole lot less than it normally is, you're really, really greedy at one point, and then it just kind of dwindles how much it eats. It may take a few bites of food, and then that's it. That's also a sign of fish are aging if you have them and they're older. Some fish also, I would say would be 5, would be their slime coat. They have a reduction in their slime coat. They don't look as smooth as they used to. They may have strings of slime coat kind of hanging off of the body, which can also be a sign of other serious illnesses if you have sick fish or you're not treating them or what have you. So also, this is something that's a little rare, but it does happen. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it myself, and it's nothing all too serious, but it's a little unordinary at times. If you ever heard of dropsy, it's a very serious illness in fish where it happens internally. The kidneys inside of fish and some other organs don't work well. They tend to fill up with fluids. And when that happens in the body cavity near the stomach area, the digestive system, the kidneys, you will see an effect called pine coning, where the scales of the fish stick out like pine cones, or kind of like a porcupine. The scales are protruded out this way in more of that tree type shape. But in this case, with an aging fish, you may see a few scales do that. Maybe 1 or 2 scales you'll see kind of do like this, but eventually they fall off. And I've actually had a fish who had like 2 scales actually fall off of its body, and there was nothing else wrong with the fish at all. So that might be a sign you might see in your fish. It's sometimes not even noticeable. You might not even notice it because it could just be one little tiny scale, depending on the size of the fish, and then that's it. You don't see it anymore. So that's another sign that you may have an aging fish, is a loss of a scale or 2. You may see sometimes that the fins tend to close a little bit, especially the tail fins. Now, a lot of the time, if you have a fish that has fins that are completely encased to sides of the body, that's a stressed signal or other diseases, and you may want to test your water parameters, and you may want to start treating your aquarium for something. Sometimes the fish may look like it appears as if it has something stuck to it, or if you have a planted tank and you clean out your tank and there's like little bits of plant somewhere, and your fish swims through them, and your fish tends to get plants or dirt or gravel or sand, whatever, stuck to its body. That's also another sign that your fish is aging, because it's losing, like I said, that slime coat, or it's lost maybe a scale or something, so it's tending to stick a little bit. That can be a sign that your fish is aging if your fish is older. So I think that's it. I don't know if there's any other ones that I can think of, but what you can do, I'll give you a couple of tips or like kind of advice. It's just from my experience, with mine only. I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, so don't take my word for it, but it may help you if you have this problem. What you're going to want to do definitely is you're going to want to do more consistent water changes. So whether you change your water weekly, every 2 weeks, you only change like 10% or 20%, you may want to do a little bit more and a little more often. You want to do that so that the water is continuously clean, because elderly fish or older fish that are aging tend to get sick more quickly than any other fish that you may have in your aquarium, because their body is a little bit more susceptible to diseases, because the organs are starting to slowly shut down. The aging process is progressing. So you want to do regular water changes. Keep an eye out on that particular fish. You may need to house it differently, because sometimes elderly fish get aggressive. If you have a fish that you've had for a while and it's starting to nip and pick at other fish, that's also a good sign to aggression, because they're just a little bit more crabby, because they're not always pain-free. They may be a little bit irritable, if that makes sense. So you might want to also keep an eye out for aggression in fish, or a fish being aggressive towards them as well. You also want to make sure you're really giving them a really high quality food, because they're not likely to eat often or in higher amounts. So you want to make sure you're getting some type of nutrient into that fish. You can also use liquid vitamins, I recommend, for elderly fish, because a lot of the times they don't eat and there may not be nothing else wrong with them, and they're just fish. Also, Daphnia is really good intestinal cleanser for fish when you're medicating or after medication. It kind of helps clean out the digestive tract of your fish, and sometimes elderly fish have that difficulty cleaning themselves out. You also may want to give them things that are higher in protein, because a lot of the time you can see weight loss as well. You'll see weight loss in your fish also. Not drastic, but little by little. When I mean with some of these things need to be happening gradually, not all in a one-time period. If you just got a fish, or you had a fish and all of a sudden it's doing these things, those are signs of bigger issues. These have to be like, they have to happen over time, and you want to keep an eye out for those things, because you'll have an elderly fish. And I did have one, and I had her when I first got into the hobby, right from the beginning. And then I realized that, hey, I'm coming up on a year and a half, almost to keeping this fish, and I know for a fact that it was over the age of 4 months old when I got it. So I tacked that on, and I kind of estimated, and I noticed that she was never sick. She never had anything, never. So I knew that I started seeing things happening, and I knew that she was aging. So I did eventually lose her. Yes, just try to keep an eye out for those things, and know that if it does happen, it's okay. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much. If you sat through this whole entire video, was kind of all over the place, believe me, I rehearsed this 1,000 times over, and I still screwed it up. So please forgive me for that, but hopefully you got that information. That's it. I will see you guys